You cried at a commercial. Not a sad movie, not a funeral. A 30-second advertisement for something you don't even use. And before the tears were dry, the familiar voice arrived. What is wrong with you? You're not a sad person. You don't walk around in grief. You function, you cope, you show up. But something small happens. A song you haven't heard in years. A stranger being kind to another stranger. Someone saying exactly the right thing at exactly the wrong moment. And suddenly, you're fighting your own face in public. And the worst part isn't the crying. It's the apology that comes after. Sorry. I don't know why I'm like this. You've said that sentence more times than you can count. But you've never actually asked what like this means. So that's what this video is. Not a reassurance that crying is okay. You've heard that. It didn't help. This is an actual answer to the question you've been carrying. Why do some people cry so easily? And what does it mean about everything underneath? Researchers at the University of Tilburg studied crying across 37 countries. They found something that doesn't fit the story most people tell. The people who cry most easily aren't necessarily the most emotionally unstable. They often have what psychologists call high affective intensity, a nervous system that processes emotional information more deeply, more quickly, and with less of a buffer between feeling something and showing it. Think of it like a volume dial. Most people have a few seconds between the emotion arriving and the body responding, a small gap where the brain can intervene. Not here, not now. Hold it together. In people who cry easily, that gap is narrower. The emotion arrives, and the body is already answering, not because they're weak, because their system is wired closer to the surface. Imagine being 7 years old. You cry because a bird flew into the window, not your pet, not anyone's pet. A bird you'd never seen before and would never see again, and the adult in the room looks at you, not unkindly, but with something like confusion, and says, "It's just a bird." And you understood, in that moment, not that the bird didn't matter, but that the size of what you felt didn't match what was allowed, so you started editing. Not the feeling. You couldn't stop the feeling, but the expression of it. You learned to cry in bathrooms, to blink fast, to wait until you were alone, to apologize before anyone asked you to. The tears didn't stop. You just got better at hiding the evidence. Here's what research on high emotional reactivity suggests. It isn't random. Elaine Aron's work on highly sensitive persons, or HSPs, describes a nervous system that processes sensory and emotional input more deeply than average. More neural connections firing, more cross-referencing between memory, meaning, and feeling. More of everything, all at once. This isn't a disorder, it's a trait. A sensitivity pattern found across humans and other species, evolutionarily preserved because it can be useful. The person in the group who notices the subtle shift in someone's mood, who feels the tension in a room before anyone names it, who processes consequences more thoroughly before acting. The sensitivity that makes you cry at commercials is the same sensitivity that makes you the person others call when something is actually wrong. You've never made that connection, but it's the same system. But here's the part that does the most damage. It's not the crying. It's what you decided the crying meant, somewhere along the way, through a room that went quiet, a person who looked uncomfortable, a culture that rewards composure. You built a story. People who cry easily are too much, too sensitive, too needy, too fragile, the kind of person others have to manage. And so the tears became evidence, not of feeling deeply, of being fundamentally difficult to love. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio spent decades studying emotion and decision-making, and his conclusion was the opposite of what most people believe. Emotion isn't the enemy of clear thinking, it's part of the foundation of it. People with damage to emotional processing areas of the brain don't simply become more rational. They can become unable to decide. The feeling isn't the problem, the shame about the feeling is. But this video is not really asking why you cry easily. You know that now. The real question is what you did with the shame. Because people who cry easily and feel ashamed of it don't just hide the tears. They hide the feelings that cause them. They become fluent in fine. I'm fine. It's fine. Everything is fine. They learn to shrink the feeling before it reaches the surface, to talk themselves out of reactions before anyone sees them, to preemptively apologize for taking up emotional space, and over time, this becomes its own kind of damage. Not the sensitivity, the war against it. Psychologist Kristen Neff's research on self-compassion found something precise. The more aggressively a person relates to their own emotional pain, the more suffering they tend to create around it. You don't get better at feeling by punishing yourself for feeling. You get more reactive, more exhausted, more likely to cry at commercials, because the small things start carrying the weight of everything you didn't let yourself feel when it actually happened. The tears aren't the overflow. They're the receipt. You're not too sensitive. You're underpermitted. There's a difference. You can't rewire your nervous system by deciding to cry less. That's not how any of this works. But you can change what the crying means, not to other people, to you. Because right now, every time it happens, you run the same sequence. Feel something, show it, shame yourself for showing it. And the shame is the part that costs you, not the feeling, not even the tears, the verdict you deliver to yourself in the 30 seconds after. What changes isn't the sensitivity. It's the story you tell about it. From, what is wrong with me? To, my system felt something real and responded honestly. That's not a small shift. That's the difference between spending your life apologizing for how you're built and finally understanding that the thing you've been hiding is also the thing that makes you someone worth knowing. The people who never cry aren't stronger than you. They're further from themselves. They built better walls earlier, and those walls work. Until they don't. Until something gets through anyway. And by then, they've forgotten how to let it move through them. You never forgot. You just wished you had. But the capacity to be moved by a song, by a stranger, by a bird that flew into a window. That's not a flaw in your design. It's the whole point of it. You were never too much. You were just in rooms that were too small. If this gave language to something you've carried quietly, like the video and subscribe. This channel is about the hidden patterns underneath ordinary pain, the moments that look small from the outside, but quietly shape how much of yourself you believe you're allowed to show.